Hey guys, it is NCS Fan 001 here for another one of those weekly trophy list updates. Today's date is Monday, October 9th, 2023. So this video will actually have covered a 2-week period of, I believe it would be September 25th through October the 8th of 2023. Because last week, of course, I didn't get an update out because I was going to be gone for a few days for my birthday and went to Charleston with my parents. That was a lot of fun. I'd never really been there outside of a few hours for a day trip before, so I got to see like Fort Sumter, walk through all the old downtown and everything. It was a good time. Also got to have one of the best birthday meals I think I've ever eaten. It was at a place called Hall's Chop House. That was one heck of a steak, and even all the other stuff there was great. So solid birthday. Had a lot of fun. The big present I got, aside from getting to go there for a couple of nights, was actually a new TV. So I'm playing on a even larger TV than I used to have. It's like a 70-inch, I think. So it's a real big TV, absolutely love it, works great so far. I still need to figure out, though, how to disable the sort of auto-detect different HDMIs, because it screws with the capture card just a little bit, makes it a little bit finicky, but it's fine. I can figure out how to fix that at some point. It's probably just a setting I need to change. So anyway, over these last 2 weeks, I have made pretty decent progress in terms of my trophies. I also reached Platinum Trophy number 750, which I'm sure will be included somewhere in the title of this video. So first off, I've got a couple of quick, easy Platinum trophies that I did almost 2 weeks ago in a game called Rabisco Plus. Now, this game reminded me a little bit of some, old Flash games. It almost reminded me a little bit of... Was it called The Impossible Game? Does that sound right to anyone? It reminded me a little bit of that, but obviously much, much easier. So, to get the Platinum Trophy, there's not really a whole lot you have to do. This was either a Ratalaika or East Asia Soft game. I can't remember which one of the two it was. It was from one of those easier developers, though. So to get the Platinum, you just have to take your first steps, which is for completing, the very first level of the game. Nothing difficult about that. Then you have to complete the first 4 worlds of the game, which is through the beige world. It's 40 total levels to get to here. So just complete the first 40 levels. There's 100 levels total, so it's just another one of those games where you really don't have to complete all that much of the game, which is probably a good thing because the game definitely looked like it was starting to get a little bit harder as time went on. So along with completing the first 4 worlds or 40 levels of the game, there are a handful of miscellaneous trophies. For example, you have to find 3 paint buckets and 3 gems. From what I remember, the paint buckets are on every, 5th level or something, like levels 5, 15, 25, and 35, and the gems are on levels 10, 20, 30, and 40. It's either that or it's the opposite way around, but basically every 5 levels you're going to find either a paint bucket or a gem, and you're going to need to find at least 3 of the 4 that are going to be in your path while completing those first 40 levels. They're a little bit out of the way, but there's nothing too bad with them. I'm sure you could find a guide if you really got stuck anywhere because it's not a procedurally generated game. And then you also have to collect all the stars on at least 20 levels, so it's generally best to do this on the first 20 levels of the game, but there are a few levels later on in the game where it's also fairly easy to get all of the stars on, so if you miss one on the first 20 levels, don't sweat it because you'll probably get it naturally on one of the later levels. So it's a simple enough Platinum. There's not much more else to say about it. You're basically just, moving around some little 2D type of screens, just up, down, left, and right, and just avoiding obstacles and just trying to get to the end. So the PS4 version took me about 29 minutes. It looks like, about 29 minutes. I'm sure, though, I could have done it faster if I had known what I was doing, because I'm pretty sure I did this version definitely faster. PS5 version only took me about 23 minutes, but I'm sure you could still do it even faster than that if you really know what you're doing. There were a couple of levels later on in the game that were a little bit tricky. I don't remember exactly which ones they were because it's been a couple weeks since I played the game, but there were, maybe 2 or 3 levels out of those first 40 that were kind of tricky that required several tries to get through, but it really wasn't anything too bad. This game's not bad. I mean, it's not quite the level of shovelware that we see in a lot of games these days. This one was, a reasonably okay game. It could be reasonably fun at times. Nothing really bad to say about it, just it is a quick, easy Platinum. There's just not a whole lot to say about this kind of a game, because I've done plenty of them, and it's very reminiscent of some of those other ones. So the next game I made progress on and got the Platinum Trophy in was Platinum 749 Steins Gate, the North American PS3 version. This is a very, very old school, obscure, easy Platinum Trophy from the PS3 era, and it was even region stackable, and I believe it was even Vita stackable and Vita region stackable, which is definitely a little bit unusual for PS3 era Platinums. So this is a visual novel game, but unlike a lot of visual novels, this one was a little bit different because unlike a lot of them where you're basically going to be stopping at various points to make certain dialogue choices, this one doesn't really do that. Instead, you make your choices through answering your phone and answering with certain responses to text messages or choosing whether or not to pick up a phone call. So it's definitely a little bit different from a lot of the visual novel games out there, and I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of that because it made it really easy to accidentally miss things. The good thing is, though, that the game allows you to quick save pretty much whenever you want, so what you can do is you can follow the walkthrough on PlayStationTrophies.org, and I think there's also one on PSN Profiles, but I followed the one on PlayStation Trophies, and pretty much after every single decision, just make a quick save right there, and you shouldn't have too much to worry about. So you're going to get several trophies here just for completing the first 9 chapters of the game. So all of these bronze trophies are going to be unlocked automatically just by completing those chapters of the game. And this is for getting what I presume to be the main, ultimate ending of the game, as best I could tell. This game is a lot about, time travel and such, and I'm not the biggest fan of, time travel-styled plots because, as much as I like movies like Interstellar, it'll confuse the hell out of you if you don't really know how any of this stuff works, and it was definitely confusing to me from what I could understand of it. So that was just a personal thing for me. I wasn't as big a fan of it because it's that more confusing plot line to it. So you have a bunch of different endings you can get as well. I believe there's 6 total endings to get this trophy, so it's these 5 silver trophy endings. I don't even remember exactly what this one was. I guess this was just something you do through certain certain email answer choices. But you'll get the Steins Gate trophy as well as these 5 silver trophies and this other gold trophy for obtaining the game's 6 different endings. Again, if you're following the PlayStation Trophies guide, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Now, one nice thing about this game is that it has a trophy tracker built in, and unlike many of the old games that had trophy trackers built in, where the trackers were usually wrong or somehow bugged the game out, this one didn't seem to have any issues. I didn't run into any issues as far as I could tell. I hope that that's a common thing for most people. So for these next few trophies, you have to unlock all of the CGs, which I believe is all the different scenes, all of the different dialogues that are available throughout the game. And there are quite a few things you have to find, but once again, if you're following the guide, you should be able to get through all of these without too much trouble. I would estimate that you could probably do this platinum. If you were playing it straight through from start to finish, I could see you getting this platinum trophy within 5 to 6 hours if you're really skipping through dialogue and pretty much know what you're doing. I could definitely see it being doable that quickly, but for a first time playing through it, you probably will not get through it quite that fast because you'll need a lot of quick saves because there's a very good chance you'll probably miss a few things here and there. So then you have a few really easy, pretty much unmissable trophies. You just have to view your emails sent, so your send history, as well as read an email and reply to one. You also have to just clear someone's mail without reading it, which you'll get on progress toward one of those endings if you're following the guide. And then you just have to change your phone's wallpaper and ringtone as well as ignore a phone call. All of these trophies are very, very easy. You'll probably be able to knock them out very early in the game, or most of them, and the last few you might not be able to get immediately. You might have to wait until you get to certain parts if you're following the guide, but it's nothing too bad to worry about through there. And then you have a bunch of other trophies related to getting various things like wallpapers, episode summaries, songs, things that you'll get by making certain dialogue choices and befriending certain characters. I know I said dialogue choices there. It's not dialogue choices, it's, phone email choices and response choices, but it's easier just to say dialogue choices. So basically, by making certain choices throughout the game, you'll be able to get all these different wallpapers and songs and all that kind of stuff. I don't really remember how I got these next few. I think that these were all just related to making certain decisions as well. And then finally, you have this trophy, which can be knocked out very early in the game. Whenever you're going to that phone wave device, which I think has something to do with like setting the timing in the world or whatever, you just have to input the wrong code 10 times at any point and you'll get this trophy, so it's very easy to knock out early on. So yeah, I was definitely very confused with how this game played the whole time, just not really understanding how the story worked. But it is a pretty easy platinum trophy, especially by PS3 era standards. So I probably wouldn't recommend this one as much for trophy hunters, but I know that it's beloved by visual novel fans. So if you're a fan of visual novels and you like to really play through the entirety of it, not skip any dialogue, you'll probably enjoy this one. At least that's what I've heard from people. But like I said, it wasn't really quite the kind of visual novel that I'm used to playing when I do play them. So, next up, the big platinum trophy number 750, Call of Duty Classic. And with Call of Duty Classic finished, I have now completed every single PS3 Call of Duty, with the exception of the PS3 version of Advanced Warfare, which I wouldn't mind doing the platinum trophy again. It's the DLC on that one that scares me, having to do that again because it was pretty brutal on the PS4. And the PS3 version of Black Ops 3, which I don't ever intend to do, and I don't even think is currently doable anymore, regardless. And then on the PS4, I still haven't done either version of Cold War. I haven't done Black Ops 4, which is, of course, never going to happen. And that's really about it. Oh, Black Ops Declassified, can't forget that one. I mean, I might still do it someday. We'll figure that out someday. And then Vanguard PS5, I will do that at some point. I just need to kind of not be lazy about it. I played several Call of Duty games recently, and they aren't always the most not frustrating games to deal with, because you guys knew my thoughts on Modern Warfare 2 on the PS4 and PS5, so the new version of Modern Warfare 2, you guys probably know my thoughts on that game and how much I really didn't like it. And this game is pretty much the exact same thing, with just how brutal that veteran difficulty is. So the interesting thing is that you can earn 35 of the game's 38 trophies within a single day, within like 6 to 8 hours, because that's exactly what I did 12 years ago. Yes, it took me over 12 years to come back and finish this platinum trophy. I did pretty much the entire game right after we got it for free when the PlayStation Network outage in 2011 happened, when the network went down for like 3 weeks or whatever, and they gave us a few free games to make up for it, and this is one of the ones I picked. So in just a single day, which I think was the day before I started school back for the next year, which would have been right before I probably started 9th grade, right? Or would that have been 10th grade? Yeah, I think that was right before I started 10th grade, now that I think back on that. I'm trying to think back. But anyway, most of the trophies are just story-related and will be unlocked simply by completing the story for your first time. Every single trophy through here will be unlocked by completing the story missions on any difficulty. I would recommend doing your first playthrough of the game on regular so you can go ahead and unlock another trophy very easily, because there are no trophies for finishing the game on Greenhorn or Recruit difficulty, and even stupider, this game doesn't have stacking difficulty trophies. It's one of those old school games that didn't stack your difficulty trophies for some ungodly reason. So even if you did your first playthrough and suffered through your first playthrough on Veteran, you would not unlock the hard or regular trophies by doing so, which I think is incredibly stupid. If you are capable of beating this brutally hard game on Veteran, then you should never have to play through it again on the lower difficulties. Mostly because once you beat the game on Veteran, Hardened feels like a Recruit difficulty in modern Call of Duty games, for the most part, aside from a couple little sections, which I'll get to in a minute. And then, of course, regular is even more of a joke. There are also 5 miscellaneous trophies, but they're all pretty easy to do. You'll probably get at least a couple of them just by beating the story on regular, and the rest you can clean up through chapter select on the Greenhorn Recruit difficulty. So completing a mission without dying or loading a checkpoint, you should easily get this while playing through on regular, and probably even while playing through on hardened. You might be able to get this on 1 or 2 of the veteran missions. The training mission does not count. This one you can potentially do on Veteran. You can do it on the very first mission. I actually did that on the very first mission by accident pretty much, just while playing through it on Veteran when I started back playing the game. Then you just have a couple other miscellaneous trophies for using different weapons to complete your levels. You can do all of these on the very first combat mission of the game. It's very short, so just replay it a few times and you will get all of these trophies. So, like I said, you can knock out all but 3 of the trophies, including the Platinum, within about a 6 to 8 hour period in a single day. The real difficulty of this game really only comes down to the Veteran difficulty trophy because, for those who don't know, Call of Duty Classic uses the old school health system to where you need health packs to refill your health. There's no auto health regeneration. The problem is that on Veteran, health packs seem to have disappeared from existence. That means that once you take damage, you cannot get that health back. Now, mercifully, most of the missions in this game are pretty short, and your health does refill between missions. But another problem is that you can only get checkpoints if you have at least 33% of your health left. At least that's how it's supposed to work. From what I've heard, it will occasionally bug out on very rare occasions and give you a checkpoint with less health than that, but that's not a common thing, so don't bank on it. So you have to basically beat each mission while taking only like 1 or 2 hits pretty much the entire time. And that is not easy given just how brutal some of these missions are, because the AI, the enemy AI, has just perfect godlike accuracy, sometimes even seemingly through walls. However, the game does have a couple of advantages over some of the other difficult Call of Duty games in that, unlike most of the difficult ones, this one very, very rarely has infinite enemy spawn points. Most levels have a finite number of enemies, which means that if you can be patient, hang back, and clear it out slowly, you can eventually eliminate all the enemies and move forward. So that is at least fairly reasonable. Secondly, the enemy AI, though they are super, super accurate shots, they're not really the smartest. If you start firing in their direction, they'll often not fire at you at first, or they might even miss at that time. And if you manage to knock one down but not fully kill them, they actually will not shoot until they get back up into a firing position, which is kind of nice. There's no like last stand or anything like that like there is in some of the later games. So that is kind of nice as well. Plus, your friendly AI in this game is actually really good in most missions, which is really surprising. So in a lot of the missions, if you have friendly AI, you can kind of just make them do a lot of the work for you while you hide a lot of the time. It's not going to work in every mission, but it does work in quite a few of them, especially a lot of the American missions. Though another piece of difficulty with this game is the fact that there is no grenade indicator in this one and no way to throw grenades back, meaning that you really need to be like paying attention to where grenades are coming from. They aren't as grenade obsessed as they are in something like Call of Duty World at War, which is good, but they do still throw grenades at you and you do still have to have an ear out to be able to listen to them. So when it comes to beating the campaign on Veteran, these first few missions really aren't anything too bad. They shouldn't give you too many problems. When you get to this mission, this is the first one that has a couple of tricky sections. You have to get into the church at the beginning while fighting against slowly respawning groups of enemies that are near the church. And then there's the very last part, which has semi-infinite spawning enemies. I don't know if it's fully infinite. I think eventually they may stop once your like allies advance far enough. Then this is the first vehicle mission. The vehicle missions are always hell on earth just because they're very, very random. There's a lot of luck involved with this game as to whether or not enemies are able to hit you at certain times during certain missions. And this is one of those where it's at its ugliest because you can very easily just... It'll seem like you're having a great run and then you'll just get completely screwed over because an enemy will just completely light your vehicle up and kill you instantly. And it sometimes happens, it sometimes doesn't. Sometimes your shots connect with the enemies, sometimes they don't. It's just how this game works, on especially the vehicle missions. This one actually wasn't too bad. You can kind of hide in the trenches for a lot of it and crawl your way to victory when there's only a couple enemies and a lot of allies. This one in the chateau, it's a little bit annoying trying to figure out exactly where all the enemies are, but it's nothing too terribly bad. This mission actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It's the last main American mission. It's just the one where you have to break into the prison camp, and within 10 minutes you have to free the prisoner and get out. I thought this one was going to be a lot worse than it was, but the enemies are completely limited here on their numbers, and if you just know exactly where they're going to spawn from, you won't have too many problems. I followed Labradoodle's rules walkthrough of this game, and it was definitely helpful to know exactly where enemies were going to spawn at, because the game is nice about having fairly consistent enemy spawn points and consistent numbers of enemies through playthroughs for the most part. So that is another slight advantage to this game. It's very hard, but it feels in some ways more fair than the hardest difficulties on some of the other Call of Duty games. For example, the Favela mission in Modern Warfare 2, where just infinite numbers of enemies respawn on the rooftops and shoot at you. Or Mile High Club, where just the enemies will shoot you from all over the place and you only have a minute to get through the whole thing, so the time is extremely brutal there. And then, of course, World at War with several brutal missions, plus the whole grenade spamming issue of that game. And from what I've heard, Call of Duty 2 is actually pretty similar in difficulty to this game, despite the fact that it has regenerating health and grenade indicators, because it apparently has a lot more infinitely respawning enemies and stuff like that. So be glad that we're not like our Xbox brethren and don't have to play through that game on Veteran for any trophies. We also lucked out with not having to do Call of Duty 3 because that one has a really time-consuming multiplayer grind, like 40 to 50 hours minimum per player, I'm pretty sure, from what I've read of their guide. Oh, and also be glad that we don't have the World at War achievement list, because that one has achievements for prestiging once and prestiging 10 times, which of course, is going to take a lot of time to get through, even though World at War was a lot of fun to play the multiplayer on. So yeah, we definitely could have had it worse at some points. And then Call of Duty 3, apparently its veteran difficulty is also fairly challenging, though not as bad as Call of Duty 1 or 2. Anyway, though, now we get into the British missions. The first one is annoying because you have to get back across the bridge, get on an AA gun and use it, or not an AA gun, it's a Flak 88, and use it to kill a tank across the bridge, but you'll be shot to death pretty much the second you get on the gun, so you have to jump on, tilt it like 2 degrees to the right, jump off, and then jump back on and repeat that process and hope you don't get shot while crossing the bridge, because it's 100% luck-based as to whether or not you survive and have any health left. This mission I thought was going to be really bad, but I found kind of a cheese strategy for it. You go into the little guard tower on the bridge with the machine gun in it, and what you can do is pop onto the machine gun, fire it in the direction of the enemies for 2 to 3 seconds, then pop off and repeat this process over and over again. After you get your first checkpoint, sometime shortly after that, a group of enemies will spawn in behind you, but you can snipe them with the Lee Enfield that you're given, and then if you're quick enough, you'll get to the end of the mission before another wave spawns, and then you just have to wait out the 5-minute timer, which can actually be done by sitting in that very same guard post without even having to kill any of the tanks. So it's a cheese strategy, but you kind of have to do it to beat this game on Veteran. It's pretty much a requirement in order to beat this game on Veteran. I can't imagine trying to do that legitimately killing the tanks. It would be like a nightmare. Eater Dam, speaking of nightmares, this is one of, if not the longest mission in the game, which automatically makes it one of the hardest, because you have to make that tiny little health bar last for way longer than any other mission in the game. And it's not that there's a whole lot of enemies, nor are there any infinitely respawning enemies, it's just the fact you have to brute force your way from one checkpoint to another, and you pretty much need to have all of your health by the time you fight all the way to the bottom of the dam and destroy everything down there, so that way you can have your health for the way back up and the little truck escape at the very end of it. So it's just an extremely long mission with quite a few enemies, and yes, you can memorize locations and stuff, but the mission just takes forever. The truck ride, this one is also horrible because it's entirely luck-based as to whether or not you hit your targets or they manage to hit you most of the time. You get a checkpoint after you do the sort of bridge defensive portion at the beginning, and you want to make sure you have all of your health when you hit that checkpoint, because the game is supposed to give you a second checkpoint sometime later in the mission, but on the PS3 that second checkpoint seems to be bugged and doesn't seem to appear for most players, including myself. So you're pretty much going to have to complete most of the mission without really even being hit, and with no chance of getting a checkpoint. And it's just as terrible as it sounds because, well, the Panzerschrecks aren't the most accurate, you have a limited number of them, sometimes the enemies will just pick you off through the walls of the truck, sometimes they won't hit you at all, sometimes your partner will kill them, sometimes he won't hit anything. It's just a giant mess. Airfield Escape is another vehicle-based mission, but it's not quite as bad. You basically have to get through the first part of it unscathed to have any chance at the second part where you have to hop on an AA gun and use it to shoot down some planes. But at the same time, there will be a group of 3 enemies that infinitely respawn on a ledge up to your left, and you have to shoot them with the AA gun for the most part to get through it safely. But sometimes they'll hit you and sometimes they won't, and that will determine whether or not you get through. So yeah, once again, luck-based at times. Battleship Terps. This one is also horrible. This is one of the worst missions in the game. This one frustrated me just as much as the dam and the truck ride, because you don't have any allies here. Well, you have an ally for the first, 10 seconds of the mission, which is a lot like Eater Dam, but it's just extremely, extremely tight close quarters with enemies with godlike accuracy and several areas that are just absolutely awful to get through. Possible infinite respawning enemies at one point of it as well, and just a lot of close quarters battle. You have to have every enemy location absolutely memorized to have any chance of getting through this one on veteran. Then we get to the Russian missions, which finally drop the difficulty back more like the American missions. This one is really easy. There's not even any combat in it. You might die once or twice in it, but there's no combat, so it's not really all that difficult. It's just a little bit random as to whether or not you can get up the hill without getting blown up by artillery. This one, the only really hard part of this mission is at the very beginning where you have to cross an open field with machine guns firing at you, and you really can't take any damage there or else you're going to be screwed because the rest of the mission is a little bit longer than some of the other Russian missions. Train station is fairly easy, nothing much to worry about with this one. The sewers is a little bit tough because it's pretty close quarters again, but it's not awful. It doesn't have any infinite enemy points as far as I can remember. Pavlov's house, I thought this one was going to be absolute hell on earth, and it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. Because the first part of the mission, you basically have to get to the objective where you're going to clear the house out without taking damage, which will take a few tries, but it's not awful. Then you have to clear the entire house of about 20 to 25 enemies, without really taking many hits. You can afford to probably take one hit at most in that section if it doesn't drain too much of your health. Once you clear all the floors, and this is the one time where your friendly allies do absolutely nothing to help you, if you eventually clear that, you'll then have to blow up 2 tanks with PTRS rifles, but the rifles aim really slowly and clunkily, and the tanks will pretty much one-shot you. And then you have to hold out at the end, but there's actually a cheese spot you can go to where most of the time enemies won't even come after you, and if they do, they're going to be very easily picked off from right in front of you, so it could have been worse than it was. Then you finally have 2 more ground missions that aren't anything too terribly bad, 2 tank missions that aren't anything too terribly bad, especially the first one because you have a bunch of other tanks to use as meat shields pretty much. Then you get those trophies along the way. And then you have the final American mission. This one's actually not that bad. You get a lot of allies. It's fairly short. It's not really all that bad. Just use the Panzerschrecks at the end instead of the Flak 88. Then the last British mission, this one is horrible. This one took me way too long to get through on veteran because I kept getting screwed over at several points. There was one time where I got stuck in a tree, so I had to kill myself to restart the checkpoint. That actually happened once. And then otherwise, the mission is just, it's not a good one to go through because it's very easy to die on that very last area where you have to clear out several bunkers. And it seems like you'll kill all the enemies and then one will just pop up out of nowhere and one-shot you. And it's another one where you don't really have allies. And then finally you have the final Russian mission. This one actually isn't too bad either because you can mostly just let your allies do everything, so it's not too bad. So, do your first playthrough on regular, then go back and clean up your miscellaneous trophies, then suffer through the game on veteran, and then finally go back and do one more playthrough on hardened, which will by that point feel like recruit difficulty because you actually get health packs and you'll know exactly where all the enemies are. But the fact that you get health packs makes it a million times easier outside of 1 or 2 slightly frustrating parts like some of the vehicle missions. So yeah, Call of Duty Classic is done. Thank God I never have to touch that game again. And yeah, that is going to be one of my all-time proudest Platinum trophies because it is a very difficult veteran mode. Is it the hardest Call of Duty Platinum? Of the ones I've done, it is. It's harder than World at War, in my opinion. World at War is really annoying with the infinite grenade spam, but I think Call of Duty Classic is harder overall. But I don't know if it's quite the hardest Call of Duty game, because there's also Black Ops 4 hanging over your head, and that one is no campaign. It's multiplayer, zombies, and Blackout, which is the Battle Royale mode. And I know of its infamous level of difficulty, and it's just not something that I want to suffer through, and it's something I'm never going to do unless it's fully boostable someday with only 2 people, which I highly doubt would ever happen. Plus, all the zombies Easter eggs in that game are absurdly long, from what I've heard, because I know a couple people that have done it and said how difficult it is and how time-consuming it is. So that one's probably never going to happen. I don't know if that one's technically harder than COD Classic in terms of overall difficulty versus just the time and grind that it takes. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I'm not going to be the one that goes and finds that out. Then, we started out the DLC for Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about sort of what's going on with streaming at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. So far with Separate Ways, I've earned 1 story-related trophy from, I think it was Chapter 3 or maybe Chapter 4. Both of these are boss fights. I'm pretty much at the start of Chapter 5, so you'll get both of those just by completing the story as well. I'm playing through on Assisted per the guide on PSN Profiles just to learn how the DLC works and where the enemies are and get lots of money for the next playthrough. The second playthrough I'll do will be on Professional, which will get me this trophy as well as both of these for beating the game on Professional. It's not overly long, but it's definitely going to be challenging at times because you can't use some of the same strategies you could use with the base game with some of the really good gear and stuff like that. And then finally, you have to complete the DLC on Professional mode with an S+ rank, which means on a new save, in under 2.5 hours with no more than 10 saves. Now, the game's only 7 chapters, but they're pretty long at times, so I feel like this is going to be pretty challenging. But we will have to see. I know that you can at least use the exclusive upgrade tickets if you purchase them from the store. And call me a pussy all you want. I'm going to use them. I really don't care what anyone says. Clearly, I can beat difficult games, but if there's a way to make them easier, I'm going to make them easier. If Call of Duty Classic had been like the modern Call of Duty games that sometimes have like a bug in them or a built-in feature where you can just beat the last checkpoint of missions on veteran to make them count. If Call of Duty Classic had that, I absolutely would have done that, or be like, only complete the final mission on veteran and it gives you the trophy for beating the whole game. If that game had that, I absolutely would have used it, but it doesn't, unfortunately. I mean, I guess it's kind of a good thing it doesn't, because then this wouldn't be a very proud platinum. So I can beat difficult games, but if there is a way to make it easier on myself, I'm going to make it easier on myself, and you guys can complain about that all you want. It's just what I'm going to do because I don't play games to be miserable. And finally, I grabbed another platinum trophy in Paw Patrol Mighty Pups Save Adventure Bay. Now, the reason I want to do this was, for one, to decompress from the difficulty of Call of Duty Classic, and 2, because I initially kind of wanted to stream this game, but then I remembered something about the PS4 version. The PS4 stream did very well, but it has given me more problems with copyright than any other live stream I have ever done. So because of that, I don't want to deal with the copyright again, therefore I'm not going to stream my way through any more Paw Patrol games. Because YouTube, of course, doesn't care about the people being copy-struck, even if it's complete BS claims, and there's no real good way to fight them a lot of the time without putting a risk to losing your channel, or at least getting in trouble with YouTube, or getting a community guideline strike, whatever it is. So yeah, that's why I'm not streaming any Paw Patrol games. I'll stream other children's games, but definitely not this one, or this franchise. This game's alright. It's basically just a bit of a platforming collectathon with a few, like, QuickTime events. It's very, very easy to get the Platinum Trophy on. You can do it in anywhere from, like, 2 to 4 hours if you know what you're doing. It's a great game if you have young children. You could teach them about trophy hunting by making them play through this game and getting you the Platinum Trophy. So it's not actually that bad of a game, especially compared to like shovelware and stuff out there. It's actually, the game is functional, it works correctly, there's no major like complaints about it, except you might say that it's too easy, but of course it's meant for kids, so it's supposed to be easy. So you're going to get 7 trophies here just by completing the main story of the game, the 7 main chapters of the game. I will warn you guys, there are reports out there that this mission, this 5th mission, has some bugs to it, to where if you either don't find all of the collectibles or get stuck somewhere during it, you may not be able to unlock the trophies, like they may just not unlock, or you may just not even be able to replay the mission. So I highly recommend that before you do this 5th mission, back up your save file and then get all of the collectibles in a single go of the mission. Follow a guide if you have to, just to make sure, and that should ensure that you don't run into any problems with it. That's what I did. I didn't run into any issues on either this or the PS4 version, so I would definitely just warn you guys to do that, just to make sure you don't have to delete the game and do a whole nother playthrough of it for like 1 or 2 trophies. Then you have to find all of the collectibles in each level. Each level contains 3 badges for you to find, as well as a certain number of pup treats, which are the little doggy bones. And there's a grand total of 7,250 of them throughout the game, but not all of them are in the story. Many of them are in the mini games, and you do have to find all of them, but most of them are right along the main path and very easy to get. Then you have to play through all of the mini games, so you just have to beat the first 3 mini games. You have to beat all levels of all mini games and get all of the treats, the pup treats in each level of each mini game, so you're going to get all these bronze trophies along the way. The 10 consecutive jumps, if you're an adult, I seriously hope you don't struggle with this trophy. Same with this obstacle course one. If you're a child, you might struggle with it just a little bit, but if you're an adult, I really hope you don't struggle with these silver trophies here. And then, so yeah, just complete all of them, get all the pup treats in all of them, and you shouldn't have any problems. And then finally, you have all these remaining silver and gold trophies for finding all of the collectibles. The collectibles are unlocked either by finding badges or by finding pup treats. So by the time you found every pup treat and every badge in the game, you will have all of your collectible trophies. And then finally, just a gold trophy for completing the game for the first time. So, quick, easy platinum trophy. Not as bad as a lot of the easy platinum games out there. It's a well enough put together game, at least. So, I don't have any major complaints for it. It's a game for children. What else do you want me to say? Again, I think I deserved a little bit of decompression after Call of Duty Classic. So, let's go ahead and sync up our trophies. Oh, well, that's a new one. Okay guys, I'm pretty sure it's fully synced because these statistics look the same as they did earlier today when I finished the Paw Patrol Platinum. So level 841, 60%, 26,747 total trophies, 751 platinums, 4,910 golds, 7,167 silvers, 13,919 bronzes. So, plans for the upcoming week. So the main thing that I would want to work on is, of course, just the Resident Evil 4 DLC. But along with that, the other plan for October really is just to do the Raven PS4 edition. I've got the disc for it, so I'll probably pop that into the PS5 and probably grab a few quicker, easier platinums out of my backlog because I did just finish a big game. So that's usually what I like to do, you know, finish up a really big game like this, then go back and start cleaning out my backlog a little bit of games that I own but haven't started yet. And then for November and beyond, GTA 5, Shadow of the Colossus, the PS4 version of Resident Evil 4 Remake, SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake. I think that we're supposed to get the PS5 version of that real soon, so that's going to be fun to play through again. It won't be streamed this time, most likely. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. Maybe if you guys want to see it, I'll stream it as well. And of course, Outer Worlds, got to go back to that one as well. And in terms of upcoming DLCs, I know that Fallout 76 is getting its New Jersey Atlantic City DLC in December, and Power Wash Simulator is getting DLC for both versions related to Back to the Future next month in November. So that's exciting. It'll be kind of nice to go back to those games for the first time in a while. God, that'll be the first time I booted up my PS4 in like 6 months at this point, I'm pretty sure. But there is another update when it comes to streaming, actually a couple of updates. So I think I talked about this first update previously in relation to my PS3, but for some reason I can no longer stream through that old PS3 capture card. I think it's just kind of either something with the capture card or maybe something with my computer, I don't know, or maybe even something with YouTube. But I tried to stream on the PS3 with Call of Duty Classic and it just didn't work. And I tried it a little bit with Fallout 3 just as a test and it still didn't work. I'm still going to experiment around a little bit with it at some point, but for now it's pretty fair to say that there won't be any more live streams on PS3. Which is honestly not that big a deal because I have very few old PS3 games to go back to anyway. And the capture card still works for recording videos, which is what really matters. I would have been really, really sad if I had to record the Call of Duty Classic Platinum Trophy unlocking through the old school sticking a camera on a tripod method that I haven't had to use in years. I mean, that would have been kind of ironic and hilarious given it was like the third or fourth game I ever earned trophies in, but it's not something I'd ever really want to go back to having to do because the quality is not very good. So that's that for PS3, but I think I already talked about that previously. The other major issue, though, is with streaming on PS4, PS5. I have Spectrum, and they are once again illegally throttling my internet connection. You guys might remember they did this crap to me back in 2020, in the summer of 2020, and it stopped me from streaming for a couple of weeks while I tried to get them to fix it. At first, they wouldn't do anything, and I mean, they wouldn't do any sort of way to help me. But eventually I complained to the Better Business Bureau, and mysteriously within about 24 to 36 hours of that complaint going live, mysteriously they were all on the phone trying to contact me and telling me that they were fixing the issue. So, real funny how they suddenly find a way to fix an issue as soon as you complain to something higher up. Isn't that interesting? It actually did work there, so that's pretty cool. I hope I don't have to do that again because it is a lot of work to put into getting it fixed when it really shouldn't have to be work I have to do. But they're supposed to be coming out on the 11th, which is in, a few days, Wednesday. So they're supposed to be coming out and fixing the issue then. But supposedly, it's so freaking stupid. Apparently, there's another issue that they have to send a different tech out here for on a different day. And, the only day they can even come out this month is the 18th at, 2 in the afternoon, which means I'm going to have to take off half a day of work just to go and let these people in to fix this stuff instead of just letting them fix it all at once because they're incompetent or something. I don't know. It pisses me off. It just royally pisses me off because the throttling is supposed to be illegal unless it's very explicitly stated in the contract you sign, and I'm pretty sure that the contract or anything I signed didn't do that, didn't list that as being a common thing that they would or could do. So I'm pretty sure it's illegal, but of course no one's ever going to punish them, so they're just going to keep doing it. They did it to me a few years ago, and they decided to do it to me again here. And I know it's throttling because I checked my internet connection on a speed test while I was trying to stream yesterday, and mysteriously my download speed dropped to 200 to 250 megabits per second instead of the 500 that I'm paying for, and my upload speed was consistently below 5 megabits per second, which is the quality that I stream in. It was usually at 2 megabits per second, or sometimes it's 0. So yeah, I'm getting throttled hard, and yeah, I'm not happy about that. So I don't know when the next stream is going to be, is what I'm getting at with all this. I don't know when I'm going to be able to stream again. It depends on if Spectrum can get their act together and actually fix the problem, or if I'm going to end up having to go higher up again and go through that whole process. I don't want to have to do that because, again, it's annoying. Shouldn't have to do that, but their scammer's going to scam, pretty much, is what we can say through all of this. So I don't know when I'm going to stream again. That's just all I know. If I'm going to do a test after they supposedly come and fix the thing on Wednesday, and if they fix it and it allows me to stream again, then there will be streams this weekend, or more than likely they will just only fix one thing and purposefully not make it work until they send their other person out in a week, because that's how cable companies work. And I don't even use them for cable. I use streaming services and stuff, so I only need them for internet. So yeah, definitely. It's also interesting how this suddenly starts happening again as soon as I cut the cable service permanently, so I can just use streaming and stuff, DirecTV streaming, and then mysteriously this starts happening. So yeah, just some conspiracy theories getting thrown out there. So the point I'm getting at with everything is, hopefully I'll be able to stream this coming weekend, but I'm not putting any guarantees on it. We will have to see. Also, college football season is about halfway over prior to bowl games, so it's going by pretty quickly, so schedules will be a lot more back to normal once all that's done. And when it comes to Resident Evil 4, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably just going to go ahead and play through the rest of it. I was kind of considering doing another trophy video of that game, but given the first one really didn't do that well, and now all the issues I'm having with trying to stream, I don't really think it's quite worth it. I am actively working on the Modern Warfare 2 video. Don't think I've forgotten about it. I am actively working on it. The initial editing process is about halfway done before I'll end up recording the script and adding it in, along with any other extras I want to add into it. So it's coming along. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks that video will be up. Probably next week, actually. So we have that to look forward to. So thank you guys for watching and listening to my rants about Spectrum. They are a terrible company. So thank you for listening to all that. If you made it all the way to the end, tell me how horrible your internet service provider or cable provider is and the worst things they've done to you, because that's always fun to listen to. As well as, just let me know what you've been working on. Give me a like and subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't done so already, especially if you made it all the way to the end. And like I said, for this week, video schedule should be pretty normal, but I don't know about streams. We will have to see. So, again, thank you guys for watching. This is a very long update, and I will see y'all later this week for some more trophy content.